To the Village of Mount Pleasant Plan Commission meeting for August 17th, 2022. First on the agenda is roll call. Sam?
Bhatia.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Driver.
Here.
Hewitt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Van Beckham.
Here.
Bosanowski.
Here.
All right, next, the meeting minutes, we are going to be looking at those and approving those in September. So we'll move on to old business, Division 9110, residential districts.
Just a quick update for the Plan Commission. We didn't want to leave this off the agenda, but we're going to continue to work on this one. We had a lot of stuff to review this month. So
Okay.
in light of that, we'll come back either in September or October with a more clear direction in terms of the consolidation of some of those residential guidelines that we've previously discussed. So just a brief update on that one.
Very good, thank you. Then next to new business, first is Pike River Crossing Final Subdivision Plat Application, FSP 0122.
Boy, so I'm going to try to summarize this basically fast. So you guys have seen the preliminary plat application for this a few months ago. This is the final subdivision plat application for phase one. And let me, do I have the remote? Should be up there. It is. And I didn't have an up-to-date phasing plan, but this one on the right is generally the phasing plan that they submitted with the preliminary plat, and that largely corresponds to what we're receiving today. We're receiving the first phase, which includes the northwest portion of the development and 63 units. So let's go back to the plat. Okay, so the subdivider is with Bear Development. It's in local planning area 17. The zones of the development are RM2, B3, and MX2. Actually, RM2 is the only one that we'll be concerned with today. And let me kind of go through some of the background and information. So this was actually the first review that we ever had that had a table of contents. So that's when you know you've hit the big time, when your executive summaries have a table of contents. Sooner or later, we'll get to those like hazard mitigation files that are like 400 pages long. I'm really excited about that, let me tell you. So the background is that Bear Development applied for the first phase of mixed-use neighborhood with 63 moderate density lots intended for detached houses. Future phases contain the remaining 120 detached lots, one condominium lot with 20 duplex units, one multifamily lot, 2 mixed-use lots, and a general business lot. The subject parcels are 64 acres and zoned RM2, MX2, and B3, and they lie within TID 6. This particular portion of it, I think, is about 20-some acres, if I'm recalling right. It's a little bit later on in the review. Basically, it meets, so I'm not going to go through the entire document, but it meets most of the requirements, most of the things that we have pointed out in the executive summary that have not been hit are left over from the preliminary subdivision plat conditions. One of those was basically a acknowledgement that some of the lot sizes were off. They fixed that issue as far as the lot sizes, but then created another issue which led to non-conforming lot frontages. We've presented them with a condition to correct that, and they have 3 different ways to correct that. Each of those is pretty straightforward. They can either adjust the lots, they can make one of the lots a duplex, and then use that to absorb some of the remaining lots, or the width, or they can apply for an administrative adjustment that can allow for a different amount of width. Some of the other the conditions.
Robin, real quickly, can I ask you what's the variance that you're looking for? How many feet are we talking about?
Oh gosh, so I put it out here. So they have 11 lots that are either, so the limit is 60.
Right.
They have 11 lots that are 60.5 or 61, and then they have they're very small.
Okay.
And then I'm going down because that's kind of further down. Oh yeah, 11 lots have a greater than 61 feet, and 18 lots have a width of 60.5 or 61. So very small, and an administrative adjustment can adjust anything up to 15%.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's well within that, and then the average lot would definitely not be affected because they also have lots that are 45 feet. So if they choose to go down that route, it's well within our administrative adjustments authority to do so. One of the other kind of conditions that we placed was was on the HOA documents. We noted that on the preliminary plat that some of the stipulations in the HOA documents contradicted village ordinances directly. And so we asked that those be removed. Staff and has made Bear aware of this, and we will kind of submit them a red line markup of that document for the future. Okay.
Is that what you mean by deed restrictions?
Yes.
Write-up?
That is deed restrictions, a deed restriction to HOA. Specifically, certain ones that prescribe like a single-family use on deed restriction on the lot, where the Village of Mount Pleasant allows a 1 or 2 family use or some other thing on the lot. If there's, say, somebody buys this and 30 years down the line, they want to add to it and make it a duplex or something like that, Mount Pleasant feels that we shouldn't deed restrict that for all time. There's going to be a house, whatever house shows up on there right now, but in the future, yada yada. And then kind of going through this, the other kind of things as far as we needed a plan for street trees submitted. Most of the time in between the preliminary plat and the current situation was spent on talking about the roundabout. So the roundabout is on Yates Drive and Oaks Road. The TIA is still pending, of course, which is kind of the norm for these things, that the TIAs take a long time. So we don't really have concrete, if you don't mind the pun, sort of parameters for what is necessary or required for that particular intersection. The overall TID project plan had a roundabout there for traffic calming reasons and sort of beautification reasons and all that sort of stuff. But technically, for as long as this project and there's no Oaks Road behind it, it won't really see the kind of traffic volume that would necessitate a controlled intersection. So they're currently submitting an uncontrolled intersection. So kind of skipping down, so you guys have all sort of hopefully read your packets through and through, and go down to, I'll summarize some of the fiscal note. These parcels lie within tax incremental District 6. The subdividers indicated a potential request for assistance from the district, which requires Community Development Authority and Village Board review of their pro forma and development agreement. Some of those have already been submitted. The village staff assumed assessments of $300,000 per unit, and that's basically an average to accommodate that there is duplex units, single family, and multifamily throughout. So it's a real rough estimate. The proposed development overall has a proposed project value per acre of 1.3 million, which is greater than the village target of 1 million per acre. So this particular phase 1, it contains more of the roadway than the overall site as a whole. So while as the overall site would only need percentage, 15% or 15% on a 15-year schedule, 11% on a 20-year schedule to pay for its repaving and taxes. Just this phase would be an obligation of $588,000, which would create a 31% tax obligation on 15 years, or a 23.4% obligation. Basically what that means is we're trying to figure out, okay, one of the most consistent things that we need is when we get a public road, we have a tax obligation and a municipal obligation to repave it in so many years. We either do 15 or 20-year repaving schedules, depending on the quality of the road and how long it lasts and how brutal our winters are. We just basically say, okay, is the proportion of our budget that we are assigning to repaving, is that jibe with how much this is going to pay in taxes for the amount of roads it needs? And so we're trying to get a ballpark of that. Okay, so going down to additional considerations. The village staff view this development as an opportunity for a particular pedestrian-friendly subdivision due to its compact nature, neighborhood mixed use, adjacent parkland, and adjacent commercial opportunities. Therefore, the village staff request more walkability improvements and curb bump outs or raised crosswalks throughout the development. That's one of the conditions that have been listed that remain outstanding. Such improvements were present in the original concept, but not shown on the application materials in the preliminary or final plat. The applicant could also incorporate stormwater retention features such as rain gardens or bioswales within these improvements. So overall, one of the final plat obligations is for us to examine what are the changes from the preliminary plat to here. So the overall plat lost 4 detached house lots and reducing the total from 187 to 183, and 1 2-unit house lot reduced, or it will be a condo, but you get what I mean. Reducing that 22 units to 20. The phase 1 portion in particular has lost 7 lots. Village staff is concerned with losing units given that some of the performance ratings of the project and requests for public assistance. So, you know, there's an ask on the table as well as some of the paving project performance ratios weren't quite as good. However, the value of these is a big sort of long shot figure. We basically proposed a $300,000 valuation, and the developer is saying that they will be selling for $400,000. So that's quite a big difference. So that you guys can take that into consideration. We tend to plan conservatively. The roundabout indicated on the preliminary plat. Oh, the other thing. So the arrangement of parcels between roads 3 and 4 changed largely to remove the alleyways. This arrangement lowers the number of lots front-facing the Pike River natural area, which staff believes could produce lower property values for the project. We just think that with a single-sided road, which they were happy to accommodate, that was a staff request, that more lots facing the Pike River pathway and natural area would be better for that particular neighborhood. So we overall recommend to the Plan Commission move to approve this final subdivision plat application for the recommended conditions approval. We are aware that there are a lot of conditions, but there were a lot of conditions on the preliminary plat, and those were outstanding. And we've been working with the developer on some of these sort of things. There are some sort of timetable issues as far as land, all of that sort of kind of thing, which is not necessarily you guys' concern, but it's something that is on the table that we are considering around. Basically, we're saying that you guys trusted us, staff, to review and enforce these conditions on the preliminary plat. We ask that you do so again, and we can get those in on the off of the final plat. That also being said, that there's another level of review for this, because there is an ask, and it will go to the CDA and village board. That's another sort of layer of approvals that this particular subdivision has to go through. So there will be changes between now and then based on what gets approved or denied and how the development agreement goes. Any questions on that little bit?
Go ahead, Tom.
Robin, just picking up on your last point, when was the preliminary plat brought before us?
Sam, do you remember? I'm thinking like April or May.
Okay, so April or May, they've had 3 or 4 months to deal with staff concerns.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that this is now being brought to us for final approval. And you're asking us to give final plat approval with a 1.5 pages of single-space conditions. This, I don't think, should be before us for final approval. This stuff should be dealt with before it comes to us. I understand a couple of things, a couple of conditions. The process is not designed for us to rubber stamp things, trusting staff and the applicant to deal with it. This is way beyond what I think as a matter of policy or standard practice should be in terms of coming to us with, I don't do Roman numerals that well, but you're well into the 20 conditions. And as I look at a lot of these, they could have been dealt with.
Some of it
Showing
is-
landscaping, just let me finish, Robin.
Okay, sorry.
You know, additional green stormwater management. I don't know what they're going to agree to do. You're recommending them and asking them to do something doesn't mean they're going to do it. We aren't ever going to know whether they accepted it. Things should not be brought to us unless they're ready. Preliminary plats, I get. They're a work in progress. Conditions there, I get. Final is final. Final shouldn't come to us with 22 conditions. And a lot of them, I have no idea how they're going to be enforced. I don't know. We'll never know whether they did something or didn't do something. So I think staff has to be, from my perspective, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think staff has to be more strict with developers. And this isn't the first time something's come to us that I thought had too many conditions and was premature. But this one, in my, I don't know how many years on the board, I mean, it's not that many, but I think this is the most conditions I've seen on a plat come here, and I'm not happy with
Yeah,
it.
it is a large plat. It is a large project. This is the longest review that we've done, and has most of the conditions. Some of the conditions are kind of sort of standard plat procedure that these will be and reviewed by the Public Works Department, as well as there are conditions that talk about the development agreement because they haven't done X or Y and plan on going to the development agreement process. Those conditions all sort of flow towards that. We would be happy to bring this back as an item of old business and kind of review guys the progress and changes. However, it is ultimately up to you guys as far as what you want to do with this particular project. Certainly, staff understands if you guys feel that you need to table it for another month, then that is y'all's purview. If you also, indicate that you're willing to sort of trust us to make sure that these things are done, with the provision that there is another level of approval here. There is a development agreement. And some of these conditions are going to actually probably, like what level of, say traffic calming or stormwater features or something like that, anything that's above and beyond what a developer would normally want to do, well, that's going to have to be hashed out in a development agreement. So exactly what those are going to be is going to be a part of that process as well. So we're just letting you know that.
And again, I have a lot of confidence in the staff. You guys do good work. I like the development. The developer's got a good reputation, so it isn't so much personally directed at anybody, but there is a procedure. I think there's a degree of finality and specificity that should be in.
We definitely do not disagree in any form. The applicant wanted to continue to present this in front of you guys, and we will present it to you and say, okay, this is what's outstanding, this is what is to be done. We feel that we can make sure that those conditions get met, especially with the additional levels of approval in the future.
I'm with Tom here because the fact that we're saying that this is all going to get done, but yet in the development agreement, there's going to be some give and take and things are going to fall out. There's going to be some kind of an agreement made that, okay, we're going to do these 10, but not these other 7 or whatever. So what we're going to be approving today is probably not going to be what's going to be the final agreement that you guys are going to develop, they're going to be allowed to do. So I'm with Tom here. I said, it's so many things. It's like, I have no idea what's going to get done. Because there's going to be negotiations in regards to all of them, correct? In the development agreement, most likely?
And I've always sort of advocated that I think Plan Commission should get another crack at something after the development agreement process, and especially if there's large changes. I mean, there have been changes through engineering review that haven't gone back to either community development or Plan Commission. Sometimes those things happen. If you guys want to place a condition that you have like sort of like a look back, like that you get another look at it as CDA, I'm not sure that the overall like authority of that would come from. You guys are all, I mean, this is a final approval body for this particular, final development plat. So, Sam, am I onto something here, or am I completely off base?
I think before you move forward, you should listen and discuss perhaps the implications of tabling it with the applicant, just so you understand the consequences of how that might take place. I don't know the applicant's like personal timeline, so I don't want to speak for them on that matter. But in terms of the broader point and where the Plan Commission lies in the approval process, I think in general, you all are kind of, when this, as Robin said, the staff agrees with you. We wish more of these conditions had been cleaned up between preliminary and final. We understand that sometimes timelines run tight and things like that. So, you know, when we receive applications, ultimately we review them and bring them forward to the Plan Commission as the ordinances require. There are some state statutory limits in terms of like how long we can delay specifically a plat application before bringing it to the Plan Commission. So we do have to abide by those at a staff level. But I think the broader point in that, trying to minimize conditions before they make it there, is both something that we're continuing to review internally as a part of our approval processes, but also be a little bit more strict in the future. That said, in terms of this specific application, I think it's probably, I would recommend that you talk to the applicant before you make any final
Yeah, I don't know the exact
considerations.
reasons why certain of these did not get met, and I don't stand to know that in order to be able to defend it. So we can have the applicant speak on this.
Well, one reason for speaking up is to, I guess, arm staff with a bit more moral persuasion with the next developer that, listen, you know, we got to clean this stuff up before we go final, because the commission has been on, however you want to phrase it, but the commission is making a issue out of not walking in with a bunch of conditions, particularly the ones that could have been dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing when conditions change, you can't get a DOT approval, I get it.
Yeah,
But on
and-
some of this stuff, it's just didn't, wasn't intended to.
Yeah, and
And I don't have that much patience for we couldn't be bothered, we'll take care of it later.
Mm-hmm. And a large reason for some of the late arrivals, so to speak, is that staff, and at least with the other developments that are on schedule today, staff got these and they hashed them out before it finally showed up to you. It was tight, and there's some deadlines and some rushing to get things under the wire, but I mean, there's ultimately what happened. But we'll get to that when we get to those particular reviews. So if you have any other questions of me of the general project, or I would also love to entertain if you guys are questioning any feasibility of the particular conditions that we have set. If you disagree with any of them or anything like that, then obviously dropping something would help from that point of view. But if you agree with them, then that's great. Thumbs up.
Okay. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I don't have much to add except, that I agree with Tom and Joe. I think this is not the final plat approval. And again, like Commissioner Van Beckham said, it's not against anybody, it's the process. And because of that, I think my recommendation is, maybe before I make the recommendation, Robin and Sam, they make a good point. Maybe we should hear from the applicant that if we would table it, but I like to propose that we table it until most of the conditions are cleaned up and bring back to the Planning Commission for the final approval. Because the development agreement is a separate thing. Development agreement goes to the board and CDA. So, but at the same time, we should maybe hear from the applicant what's the impact on the schedule. Is it going to jeopardize big time or not? Because otherwise, I would recommend that we bring it back in the old business for the final approval. There was one line on page 11 that I had under marked when I was reading at home. It says, before approval of any final plat. Then why are we approving the final plat? If you say before approval of any, so
some of those have to deal with if that either needs to be done or it has to go into a development agreement process. I do know, I think, exactly what you're talking about. Some of those deal with that, and some of it deals with public works review. We're working on some of those workflows, but ultimately, that they can speak to themselves as far as that's concerned. And we understand these timelines and whatnot, and it's not like we have a light schedule next month either. So we want to get developers through here as fast as possible.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to hear from the developer because they may say, hey, we agree with all of them. And that's fine, but I'd like to know which ones, if they have a question in regards to some of the asks, what's their, which ones don't they want to meet, or if they're not going to be able to meet. That would help us as well.
Okay, so I can take.
If there's no other questions of Sam or Robin, then I would invite the applicant to come up and we can address some of these things. We're not going to negotiate, but we're going to listen and see where we're at. If we get your name and address first,
Sure.
please.
SR Mills, from Bear Real Estate Group, 4011 80th Street, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Appreciate all of the commentary and discussions that we've had. I think we are in a bit of a time crunch. That's our problem, not yours, as it relates to some of the deliverables with our entitlements. But instead of focusing on that, and I can expound on that if you'd like, really, we're in the process of wrapping up the final engineering. We're going through that now. Much of this was conditioned too on the TIA that we've completed into the DOT for their review as to, is a roundabout needed? What do those improvements look like off of Green Bay Road? The size, the width, that really compresses and affects everything further to the south. So I think when you look through this commentary, we're okay with all of these conditions. We think they're all reasonable. Many of these are things that would just get picked up in the final engineering process and or during a development agreement. So it's not that there's any contention that we don't agree with them. It's just the sequencing of moving through that process where, and it's, in many instances, we've had preliminary plats, then completed our engineering and then went to final plat. We did have a time crunch here with our sellers that we needed to hit a deliverable of a final plat. We're in the process now of the final engineering. All of these are reasonable. Staff's done a great job keeping us in the loop, and vice versa on discussions with roundabouts, widths. Even like as we talk about the 60-foot width for some of the single family, there can be a lot of push and pull in there, and there's easy remedies to make sure we can accommodate that. As mentioned, there was 3, so we're very comfortable with everything on here. It's just kind of the next step in the process for us to be able to get that plat, wrap up the engineering, and subsequently then close and start construction. So appreciate but I just want to make sure everybody rest assured that we're comfortable with everything as it sits today.
Ron?
I have one comment. When you say wrap up the engineering, won't the final plat be then called the final after you wrap up the engineering? So what we have in front of us is not the final plat then, it's a work in progress.
It is, that's hence with some of these conditions that it will tweak, but we're comfortable with what we have based on these conditions that we can clean it up in a very short order here. And so I appreciate where you're coming from on that, but I think nothing is going to change substantially from what you see with the single family, the commercial, the multifamily. It will all be the same. It's just, I think one of the items was mentioned that, show the bump outs and crosswalks. Well, those are things that you typically don't show on a plat. You show in your, final construction and engineering drawings.
What would be the impact on your development on the schedule if we put this if we table it until the pending of your final engineering? Because as you said, all those things, like it might be minor, the curves and everything, but they have to be done. So I think from the project schedule point of view, I don't see any adverse impact unless you say that no, unless we have the approval, we can proceed with the design of the housing units or the condo units and everything.
Yeah, I mean, and that is part of it. We know that the final engineering, it's not inexpensive. We try and line up the entitlements. One of the bigger issues here too is we have a selling group that has listed that as a contingency to be able to roll through to the next step, and it puts us in a bit of a space of some unknown area where if we don't have that final plat approval, we run into some real issues with our seller, and I can't tell you what will happen because I just don't know. We'll have to go back and discuss with them. I just assume not be in that position if everything generally meets the acceptability standards. But so that's our issue. That's not your issue, but it could. There's a chance it would put the deal in peril, and trying to avoid that as best we can.
By seller, you mean the owner, Fink and Faithbridge? Is that who you're?
Correct. And if there's anything of major concern on these conditions, happy to discuss those and make sure that we are attentive and wrap them up ASAP.
Go ahead, Tom.
Sam and Robin, I'm just thinking out loud here that maybe next time going forward, if something comes to us, sort of for final approval with conditions, maybe as part of your presentation, you can say that you've discussed these conditions with the owner. The owner agrees with A, B, and C and not D, or doesn't agree. I mean, some sense to us that the conditions have been discussed with the owner and what the owner response would be. And then I would think too, going in the future, if the owner's applicants are here, I'd like to have them confirm what you say, that they're in agreement with these conditions and they're going to adhere to them. That would give us a little bit more peace of mind, other than, particularly when you're recommending something as a condition. That's either it's a condition or it's a recommendation. It gets a little fuzzy sometimes for me.
Sure, understood. We can do that.
Any other questions of SR, or what's your pleasure?
No,
Do you want to hear from further, or do you want to?
No, I just have another comment because my background is in engineering. It's not a construction, but I used to be, responsible for the major manufacturing construction. And to me, it gives me an the feeling that until the engineering is finalized, that you can call this as the final. I can understand that it allows you to proceed with the major aspects of the construction. But I've been through that in my life, and I'm kind of bringing my personal experiences. Even the small thing could jeopardize, or maybe engineering wise the technical is not the feasible, and then you're back to the drawing board, and your schedule gets delayed, your cost goes up, and then you're back to the village staff and the planning commission saying is no, we agree to this, but it can be done, and this and that. So I'm not comfortable because of that, but at the same time I do understand your position that you have to go back to the seller. So I guess again my final comment is, and I totally echo what Joe and Tom said, maybe is for our staff, that the process should be, strictly to follow from preliminary to final. Final mean the final. And again, maybe one or two, some major items which are in discussion. And I think Tom's idea of to add that to the for the planning commission, saying these are in discussion, we don't have any concern, the applicant has agreed, we're just going through the details and so, because otherwise I would be reluctant to put my name approval of the final. So again, it's not for you, but I think we need to either improve our process or stick our processes.
Staff, if we postpone this, what month would you suggest bringing this back on our agenda, and how much time would that give staff and the developer to fine-tune things?
So we basically rolling month-to-month applications. It would depend on how quickly they could hit a number of the conditions. bring this back with fewer than 10 for you guys. We'd probably need a week to review them, and so, and the packet goes out to you guys the previous week, so they'd have about 2 weeks, more or less, to make updates and resubmit to us for review, to get on the September time frame. There's no public noticing or anything required as part of these plats other than the standard agenda posting. So, I think every month you push it back, you're giving them, 2 weeks plus then another month or 2 months or whatever. So,
Well, I would like to give them at least those 2 weeks. My sense is to make a motion to table this, or however we should phrase it. That would be, and give them 2 weeks. I think if they put, the effort into it, they could considerably get this cleaned up, and then there could be a much clearer statement by staff in September as to what's outstanding and what agreements have been reached.
so that would place the final approval in front of the Plan Commission on, sorry, I'm just pulling up the dates. The next meeting in September is September 21st, and the board would vote on it by September 26th, just so we're all on the same page.
SR?
Puts me, I can appreciate the commentary here. I think I would like, again, in looking at some of these conditions, many of these are boilerplate that will get cleaned up during final engineering. So I just want to be realistic with submissions to the Department of Administration and items like that. Those are very routine types of items. So I guess I appreciate where everybody's coming from. I think the number of conditions, it's a mixed-use plat. There's a lot of moving parts. So I would like, and maybe this is something that staff and we can have discussion on, to understand realistically what tweaks will be made, how many of these could be handled prior to that final engineering, and maybe we have to have final engineering. Again, it just puts us in a tough spot with our sellers. So I honestly can't tell you what will happen. We just have to have that discussion with them if it's the purvey to delay it. But I don't know, in looking at these, what difference it really makes, quite honestly. Understand and certainly respect the position of the Plan Commission, but if it's a situation we just have to have our full engineering done so we can be all buttoned up, that is what it is. It's not ideal from our standpoint, but.
Right. I guess the issue is that when we approve something, we're approving on what was submitted to us.
Understood.
And so even though we are being told that you agreed to everything, but there's still engineering issues, we don't know what, like Tom said, we don't know what's going to be approved and what isn't, or what's going to be negotiated in or out.
Mm-hmm. No, and I understand where you guys are coming from on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
I'd like to ask a question to Sam again.
Okay, go ahead.
Sam, because it's on the agenda, so is the plan that if Planning Commission was to approve it, it goes to the Village Board on the Monday meeting?
Correct. I just wanted to note that we had an internal discussion whether to even formally recommend tabling this or moving it forward. And we went back and forth, and we ultimately, recommended to move it forward with those conditions. Based on the same logic that SR just said, that a lot of these, while it looks like a lot, cumulatively it looks like a lot, but I think a lot will get taken care of. Obviously it's completely your purview, and I think we certainly won't bring you this many conditions again. But when I finally made the call to bring it forward and recommend approval, because we're confident that we can take care of it and it wouldn't materially affect the final plat that you see in front of you. But again, it's your call. So I just wanted to make it known that we certainly considered what we're talking about before we made that recommendation to you all. It wasn't just recommend approval. We talked about it. So.
And Sam, I think sometimes it complicates things for us when some of your conditions are almost more an informative footnote. For instance, the subdivider shall submit the plat to the Wisconsin Department of Administration. I mean, that's per state law. We don't need to make it one of our conditions because they have to do that by law. It might come to us cleaner if, as you do this, whatever, to not, I understand why you do that, that's to educate us. Maybe that kind of comment could be more in your comments and not in your conditions, because I think there's a couple of other things that, like the applicant should denote private utility easements where applicable as a condition. Well, again, that's, I think, more state law. But as you do that, it would be cleaner to us, and I think we'd be, at least I, for one, would be less.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting, if you look back to when both Sam and I started, a lot of boilerplate conditions was actually standard, up to like 11 or 12 that were attached to, they're the same that attached to everyone. And we wanted to get away from it. And then there's some sort of creep back in here, especially as we have a new subdivision plat procedure, like an entirely new chapter. And so this helps us kind of get everything in a row, make sure everything is done, because there's a lot to it. Just kind of doing a kind of like a straw poll here. I see about 5 conditions in here that are kind of to be like sort of hashed out between staff and the developer, as far as there could be various outcomes. And that is basically the HOA documents, the pedestrian accommodations, and stormwater ones, as well as what was the other one? I did count that street trees and the slight landscaping. The reason why there's no landscaping plan for the whole thing is that there is none required for 1 and 2 family subdivisions. However, street trees is a relatively new requirement of our subdivision plat procedures. Some of these other ones will definitely be handled with the engineering department engineering review. Oh, and the lot sizes. That is the last one. So it's about 5. And then there's about 10 that are wrote, that as far as just like, hey, label this, name this street. All those are very, very minor. So just kind of giving you guys a heads up on that. And all the input is definitely appreciated as far as how to refine this to get it better for you guys to read, for us to do, and for the public to hear, because they might be falling asleep out there right now.
So a lot of these are just administrative things that are going to happen one way or another. They're a given, but they just haven't been met yet.
Effectively, yes. Why we include some of those on the conditions is what Robin said, new subdivision ordinance chapter. So just trying to kind of refresh everyone, and as Tom said, kind of keep you all apprised of what we're thinking. But then also this gets turned into an approval letter and sent out to the applicant. So it's just kind of a list of all the things that whether it's a minor check mark or an actual point of discussion. So yeah, I mean.
I guess the one question I have is from the developer again is realistically in the next 2 weeks, how many of these could you even check off?
Not many.
That's what I'm afraid of. So you're really not looking at much of an improvement coming September, so now we're talking October.
Yeah, I think you said it more plainly than I was alluding to earlier. That's part of the issue. I'm not sure what we could really get done, because some of these are just a function of the process to be able to accomplish them.
So if this were to get approved today, it would go to the village board as is today with no other changes, or would there be, as things come in, they could be added in?
Between now and Monday, they could certainly be added in, but really the package should be finalized by 5 p.m. today. So in large part, it'd be the same executive summary, and we would just make staff notes at village board on Monday to anything that we've received between Wednesday and Monday. That said, I mean, if 2 weeks isn't enough time, I don't know if 3 days they're going to check off like 16 things off this list. So,
Right.
And some of them can't be.
But if there were some major ones, that's what I'm concerned, about submitting the plat and name changes of streets, that's kind of.
I certainly could organize the condition list a little bit better and give you, sorry. I could certainly organize the condition list a little bit better and kind of do like, green, yellow, red kind of thing, where it's like, these are all really rote boilerplate stuff that has to occur just to kind of check it off. And then these are actual like staff conditions on top of the stuff that is in the ordinance. And I think that would organize it better for at least village board review and or y'all's review later down the line. Any of those conditions could also end up in the development agreement as well. Just that's also a thing.
John?
How comfortable are you if we make an approval of this today, and then if nothing happens, can you guys stop it before even after it goes to the village board on Monday night?
So the village board would theoretically approve the plat with the same conditions listed, and those conditions would be binding on the plat. So if they didn't follow any of them, unless they came back to the village board to, seek relief, we can't meet this condition for this type of reason, and reopen it, those would just be binding. So, it's not our kind of decision at that point whether to honor the conditions or not. It's what we're obligated to do as staff.
Well, the conditions have to be met, but I'm just saying, in effect, is that if we approve this, and from what the two of you are saying is that some of these are just standard, quickly being taken care of.
Yeah. Again, we wouldn't have recommended approval had we not felt comfortable that we can get them to, comply in the manner that it was written. So, but it was a discussion, so it was kind of right on that edge for us.
Yep.
Sam, if this goes forward on Monday, assuming it's approved by the village board, then is this recorded in the form when does this get recorded?
After all the conditions are updated.
And who controls that recording? Because
So we are kind of the first layer in making sure that all the conditions are met. Then the village clerk is technically the one who signs the plat. So Stephanie always reaches out to me and says, can you give this a final double check to make sure what I'm signing is done? And then the Register of Deeds will triple check it to make sure all the legal requirements for recording per
but
state
it's the
statute
village
are there.
clerk with your
With my blessing.
say-so.
Yep,
Who's the real key in the process.
correct.
So
Yep.
SR just can't run down to the
Recorded.
recorder on
No.
Tuesday morning and then say, too bad, so sad.
No, he cannot. And it's
Actually,
often,
you probably can. It wouldn't be legal.
It
but he
wouldn't
can-
do me much good.
Right.
you kind of don't see, behind the curtain, but it's pretty common that both CSMs and plats will take a while to sort out on the back end before they're recorded because, oftentimes there's, mortgage interest depending on the ownership of the property and bank interest and all that kind of stuff, getting it all lined up. So it's, it's just part of the whole process, but these don't get recorded the next week, almost ever.
One lesson, I guess, to be learned, I mean, this is phase one of this project.
Correct.
When phase two comes to us, I'm going to hope and trust that all these sorts of things are buttoned down so it final comes in pretty clean.
Yeah.
I agree. I think phase two, we should not have any condition by that time, even like zero condition, I would say. Let me just make a comment, and Sam, you mentioned CSM. So after the plat approval, again, kind of help me and maybe everyone in the audience and out there to refresh their memory. After the plat approval, then there's going to be a CSM approval. No?
Not for this one. It's basically, CSM and plats are basically the same thing, but,
Yeah.
but plats are for way more
Right.
lots.
Okay. So because in my mind, I'm trying to find a way forward. So I was hoping that
Yeah.
CSM, by the time they come, all the engineering is kind of finalized, all the the final design is done. I tell you what, as uneasy as I am, as I said, we all said, and most of us, and as much as I like to recommend that we table this, but I do understand, their applicant project dilemma that they have to go back to the seller and proceed. I am willing to make one-time exception, to go ahead, because I have not heard any concern, because the applicant has openly said that they don't have any concern with the condition and the, technically, yeah. We had the discussion, all the discussion has been on our process, administrative process, approval. But I have not heard any technical concern, and I was pleased to hear from the applicant that they say that we are working on the finalization of the engineering, but they don't have any concern. Or because of that, I am personally willing to make one-time exception to go for the approval. But my emphasis is one-time exception, because our process, it should not put us in this position again. And again, like Tom said, when the phase two come, I like to see it a very clean, no condition plat. So that's my position.
Is that a motion?
No, it's
No,
not a
not yet.
motion. I'm just,
I'm just questioning.
Well, and again, my comment is that we do this all the time. We do approve these types of plats with 1, 2, 3 conditions. It's the sheer volume of the conditions that we're looking at going, what the heck? It's way too many things that are sitting here. So that's my only comment. And with that, I would like to make a motion to approve the Pike River Crossing subdivision plat application subject to the recommended conditions for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, but I would like to just back up a bit and ask if there's any other public comment here. Okay, hearing none. Okay, then on the motion, the second, is there any further discussion? Tosh?
I just wanted to say that, you know, a lot of these requirements shouldn't have even been in there. I think that they could have been cleaned up to begin with by staff. But knowing the reputation of the developer, and, you know, I think I'm okay with it. I think it's good.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, a second, no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
SR, you've got your walking orders.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks
All
for the
right,
feedback.
thank you.
There was more bumps in the road to be taken care of.
All right, we're ready to move on to the next, which would be Yates Drive Site Plan Application SP 1422.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant applied to construct 201 units spread across 4 multi-unit buildings. Each 3-story multi-unit building has approximately 50 units accessed via shared corridors. Site plan lies south and east of Fred's Phase 1 Seasons development. Phase 1 extended the public utilities and street network southwards from Braun Road, and this development uses those public utilities. The village board amended the zoning map via ordinance 13-2022, which they approved on March 8th, 2022. The site plan follows the land use element of the comp plan. The village does not have an adopted plan for local planning area 17. We do have a project plan, however, for this tax increment district, which this does comply with. In terms of the standards, this meets all the general lot and use standards of the district. The application does not have any overlay districts that it has to comply with, and the RH1 district allows 3 or more households per lot uses by right. In terms of the village-wide design regulations, regarding Division 9D-420 parking and access, the applicant shall clarify the design of the internal pedestrian circulation when it crosses drive aisles and the parking lot access to the patio. That's condition number 1. For condition number 2, we noted a few things regarding their lighting plan. I actually received an updated lighting plan from the applicant this morning that met all these conditions. So the staff is comfortable removing condition 2 because they quickly met the comments since we provided it to them late last week. In terms of landscaping and screening, the areas perpendicular to and within 50 feet of Yates Drive and State Trunk Highway 31 require vehicular use area screening per section 90-430.30B, which is the third or now second condition. In terms of a fiscal note, the lands contained with the application lie within TID 6. The applicant indicated they will request TID aid for the project. However, we haven't received any financial information as part of this application. Any TID aid requires review by the village's financial advisor. It's subject to CDA and village board review. The village assessor estimated the assessed value for each new unit at approximately $175,000 a unit. Therefore, the project would have a total assessed value of $35 million and some change. The village staff estimates the project would use approximately 3.3% of the taxes it pays over 20 years towards the cost of repaving the adjacent local and collector roadways. This is less than the 6.7 the village spent over the previous 5-year average towards its paving program. Shows that development adequately covers its share of public infrastructure costs. Total value per acre is $3.7 million, which is above the village's target of $1 million per acre and would be the second highest value per acre for a single parcel in the village, only behind the Ascension Ambulatory Surgery Center on, 20. You have the fiscal note details below. For additional staff considerations, the village staff commend the applicant's work to reduce the front yard setbacks of the buildings, supply a secondary access point on the southern part of the property, and update their landscaping plan. The applicant's landscaping plan shows areas for no-mow turf, rainwater renewal seeding, wetland preservation, and bird and butterfly seeding. The village staff will use this plan as model to encourage other developers to identify those areas that are meant for active use and ancillary areas better served, better preserved or restored. Such areas encourage native plant and animal habitats, reduce the long-term property maintenance activities, absorb and filter more stormwater, and are more aesthetically pleasing in general. As a further note, the project's density along 31, while we don't repave 31, we have some adjacent collectors, and as we previously said in the fiscal note, these types of uses perform pretty well, particularly when they're adjacent to larger roadways that cost more for the village to repave. With that, we have now 2 recommended conditions. 1, clarifying the design standards for the pedestrian circulation system, and 2, revising the landscape plan for those vehicular use area screening areas. With that, we recommend that you approve the application.
Any questions of Sam? Yes, Tom?
Sam, I just clarify, is this the nature of the development, the materials, the layout, the aesthetics, et cetera? That's all what you were expecting to see for this next phase of the development?
Yeah, in general, yeah. I think, based on our recommendation of the zoning up to RH1, I think this is kind of the next phase of multifamily development, particularly along like state trunk highway corridors where you're really adjacent to, one of the busiest streets in the village. So it's nice to see a 3-story building being built and a year that starts with a 2. That used to be multifamily, but now we've received more than that. Now it's like nice to see a developer pushing some density here in the village, particularly with the proximity, southwards towards, the college and things like that. So I think in general, we're happy with it. We'd also like to commend the applicant. This was supposed to be on the packet last month, and we provided some preliminary comments, and we kind of both agreed that they would table it to this month internally. So we actually did what you asked of us for the last application. This got put back a month, and they worked with us to make some changes. We didn't get every single thing we asked for as staff, and they didn't get everything they asked for as a developer, but we found a compromise that we're happy with in general for this type of product.
I just have to react, how, after the last matter, to just see something that has a couple conditions dealing with cleaning up the lighting and, some landscaping plans. This is the sort of conditions we're happy having as conditions because they're pretty clean, they're easily understood by us, and we can see how they'll be dealt with by you and the developers, so it's nice.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate fiduciary working with us on that kind of stuff. But, to the last application's credit, a final plat is probably the most complicated thing that comes through. So this, while it has cleaner conditions, it's also a little bit less complicated for us to review because most of the, utilities and roadways and stuff are previously existing. So
This will be our final site plan approval. This is the final.
this is the final step. This does
Final.
not go to the village board because
Right,
it's
so-
zoned appropriately. So this is the last crack you'll get at this one. The village board, though, would see a request for assistance, both the CDA and village board, but with the minimal comments on here, that would mostly be related to finances. It likely wouldn't consider any sort of public improvements or anything like that in terms of the public improvements agreement that we put on subdivision plats.
I have a question in regards just to logistics on this. That Yates Road, that eventually will connect with Oaks Road, correct?
Correct.
How close are we, based on this drawing, are we to that intersection that, I'm assuming this is going to be where the proposed roundabout would be?
Yeah, between a quarter and a half mile to the south. So a couple thousand feet to the south. And the road kind of bends a little bit.
Yeah.
As the crow flies, it's about a quarter mile.
Okay, so somebody else controls that land that in between these two parcels then yet?
Yep, the Roner Sorensen family controls the land to the south. They've been cooperative with both Bear to the south and Fiduciary to the north because they've had to provide some easements for utilities through their property. And so they're more than aware of this because they've been kind of involved in the permissions at every step of it. But yeah, they were the kind of last major chunk in the district. They're happy. Now, I don't want to speak for them too much as private property owners, but from my understanding, they're happy to keep it farmed as is for now and leave their options open for the future.
All right. Any other questions before we have the applicant come up?
No, looks good.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Thank you, Chairman Davis. Plan Commission, Craig Raditz, Fiduciary Real Estate Development. I'm with my team, Paul Schmitter, Joey Wisniewski, and Adam Arts of Pinnacle Engineering, if there's any questions that are needed today. Thank you all. It's good to be back again about a year later from final approval of seasons, and we'll talk briefly about that. I thought I'd just quickly go through a slide deck here that we prepared for you. I'm not sure if everyone's seen it yet until because it just got finished up last night, and so I'll just quickly run through that. And please stop me if there's any questions along the way. Glad to answer. Specifically on the first slide here, as I said last time when I was here, am I the operator? Oh, okay. The down button? Excellent. Okay, just again, last time I shared, so I'll be real quick here, as we've been around almost 40 years as a development company. I think the best thing is we're pretty locally focused, Milwaukee, Madison area, Green Bay, Minneapolis, and in Northern Illinois. Primarily, we operate and own over 8,000 residences in 37 communities right now. And maybe most important, a lot of places we have apartment communities from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and every single year we reinvest significantly capitals into those projects, and we're generally a very long-term holder of our assets. So it's just hopefully for the community, it's always really important to know that we take such good care of our projects. I think you're all familiar with the site, of course, right down here at Braun Road and Highway 31. Just want to bring everyone up to speed. This last year, when we came in March in front of you for rezoning, I think what we got so excited about is we are very well aware. We're very tied in with Tracy Cross Associates. Literally since I started 27 years ago, I met him in my first 3 months. Their organization. So we've worked very closely with them. We've realized the significant need for different levels of housing. So last year, you might recall a year ago, this was planned kind of as a commercial node. We rezoned it to the high density, and this 8-acre parcel has really given us this special opportunity amidst the adjacent to the seasons. Moving down here. I just wanted to include some pictures, and a couple of these pictures are actually, if you've been, hopefully many of you have been by our clubhouse, and so that actual Seasons is not the one that's there, but you wouldn't know any different for the most part. And we're just so pleased at how it's looking right now, and some of these interior shots are actually from right down the road. Similarly, the interiors here of the units, again, all quartz countertops, hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances, and this kind of 2-story walk-up as though it's almost a condo-style type of rental. This is last week, and we certainly have had a great summer after starting last fall with some pretty precarious conditions. But ultimately, the clubhouse is in. We finally have much of the landscape up near the clubhouse solidified, and the lift on the area coming into the clubhouse. We have 7 buildings that are under roof. We're probably about 2 buildings ahead at that stage, thankfully. And basically, we started leasing April 1st. 2 buildings have come online in July. They both are fully leased, not fully occupied yet, but things are moving along quite nicely. So I just wanted to kind of share that update. Specifically, then we are looking at the site here as we show it in color. And as Sam mentioned, is that we worked all last month. We put a table on it to be sure that we were all on the same page. And I always believe a good 80% of everything we do at this stage really pays off. And specifically on looking at a closer site plan here, it's in front of you. As Sam mentioned, there are a lot of features here that were incorporated after we worked pretty heavily together to have some areas where we're going to have like rain gardens in our planting areas. We're going to be doing this heavy planting along the northeast portion of the property, getting down here to the bottom. As you continue to go south, there are some wetlands there around that area. We're going to be doing some wetland, bird, and butterfly type of plantings. I think one of the best things is the multiple entrances into the community that is going to make it much more accessible and tied in with the existing streets that are in season. So I think overall, as I move towards the reasons for the exterior here, but the overall ability to bring this different style of housing, and 3-story is what we have done really primarily for the last 25 years. It has been our mainstay, so it's exciting that way. The architecture, the actual colors on the Seasons is a dark gray hardy plank, kind of a cream, maybe even a lighter gray upper horizontal type of siding, and then we have the really strong white trim 6-inch around the windows and everything like that at Seasons. So where we really went towards, it's this modern farmhouse aesthetic. It really is using the whites very significantly. This is actually in a hardy plank that's an Arctic white with the black roofs and the black trims around the windows. The interior to the balconies is going to be a hardy plank that looks like cedar, that has the wraps on the poles and on the interior. You don't see it a lot on this rendering, but all the internal of the balconies will have that cedar-looking hardy plank. So we will use the siding on the ends here. You have that real verticality with the 3 stories, but then when you get on the side here, a little hard to see, but the 3rd story will be a horizontal, or the bottom 2 stories will be horizontal and the top will be vertical. So that look, if you've seen it other places, it's such a clean look. It's really sharp. It's really popular. I know in Economawalk there's a project, and also in the northern Milwaukee area. As I mentioned on the actual site plan that is in front of you, I went the wrong direction again. So lastly, on the unit mix, and this is where I get really excited because of all the years I've been involved, it is just so important to get mixes right in order to create different housing opportunities. The whole idea is that 4 buildings that are going to be very sharp and work on this 8-acre parcel and will completely work in tandem with the Seasons product is 73% of these units, almost 150 units, are going to be studios or 1-bedrooms. And our studios are not typical studios where it's just one room and everything, and there's a bed in the middle and that kind of thing. We're generally about 550 to 575 square feet. We have a cordoned off room. It actually is a room separate. Same with the 1-bedrooms. We really spend a lot of time with regards to that. So the whole idea, overall average of this whole community is 838 square feet, and that'll include almost 52 bedrooms, which are on the corners. I think that design is one of the best we've ever done on the corners. But what it's going to do is basically, it provides a lower price point. Again, costs are up incredibly over the last 3 to 6 months, and we're all dealing with that. But at the same time, this overall is more efficient. It's going to allow more people that can come into this community and afford living here. The 838 square feet as a comparison to the Seasons is 1,060. So it's about 225 square feet less. And again, I think it'll appeal particularly to singles, couples, and really be a nice alternative. Again, we're going to have that fabulous clubhouse. It's going to be over 3,000 square feet of public space inside the northernmost building. We're going to have a fitness center, dog run, grilling area, outdoor gathering areas, fire pit, and recreation areas. Again, achieving more affordable options. The very last slide, and we shared that last time also with you, is just out of the Mount Pleasant Affordability Report in 2021. Is just the last decade. It's had 2% growth in product versus almost 20% growth between 2000 and 2010. Again, looking forward all the way through 2050, the projected growth here in Mount Pleasant and need for housing is 234 units a year. So, Robin?
Go to the next slide. I got a chart for you.
I'm sorry?
I put in a chart for you. Go to the next slide.
Go to the next one.
Yeah, well, the other direction.
All right, next one.
Yes.
Oh,
That's this is the chart for the housing starts for the Village of Mount Pleasant from 1977 to 2022. What our speaker is talking about as far as the lack of housing constructed, you can see the big chasm between 2009 and 2018, where none of those met were remotely close to the average of the years. So whenever somebody says, "Oh, we're building," there's so much housing getting built, we're not even hitting like the averages for 2000s and the 90s. So it just gives you a lot of perspective over the long run, what we have to make up for, where we have to go from here.
so thank you for letting me make that presentation and open any questions.
What? Any questions of Craig? Go ahead.
The three-story, you are also going to have elevators?
We do,
Okay.
yes.
That's probably, because in the two stories, we don't have those.
Exactly. No, all of our three-story, and we've done four-story and beyond that, but all of our three-story, have elevators. And again, the garages, we try to also have a 1-to-1 parking ratio in the garages. And over the years, there's more things that have to go into the garages, storage space, mechanical space, and so forth. But yes, we'll have elevators from the garage floor to the third floor.
Thank you.
I was sort of struck by your emphasis on studios. That sort of seems new to me in Mount Pleasant and Racine to have such a concentration of studios. You
Right.
just determine the demand is there for studios in this area?
Well, I think it's that, and even our studios are probably about 15%. The one-bedrooms are about 60. So it isn't like, I think it's around 15% our studios. And they really, the designs that we incorporate, as I mentioned, really work out well. And it makes your bottom floor more like $1,100 or $1,200 instead of $1,500 or something of that nature. So it's important to have them, and, even from that standpoint, a lot of the students and new workers and that type of thing.
Okay.
Ram?
Just one comment, elegant design, looks very good. I'm glad that you're expanding your business in Mount Pleasant. And thank you for choosing Mount Pleasant. Looks very elegant, and I like your material list, like state-of-the-art hardy planks, and all those things. And hopefully in your next presentation to the next client, maybe it's Mount Pleasant. So you can add the market as Mount Pleasant or maybe Racine County. It wasn't there.
There is a third one in
Well,
the
thank
works
you.
that we may be back in 2 months.
Any other questions for Craig or staff? Craig, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any public comment on this? Okay. And commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve the Yates Drive site plan application SP-14-2022, subject to the recommended condition for approval as presented.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Right, next on the list is South Fancher Road, County Trunk H, site plan application SP 1722. Sam.
Mr. Chair. Hear me? Okay, there we go. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant applied to construct approximately 230 units spread across 13 multi-unit buildings. 10 have 20 stacked flats or garden apartment style units, and 3 have 10 townhouse style units. The site plan uses the existing lots in front of Tivoli Green Phase 1 and extends westwards towards South Fancher Road, which is County Trunk Highway H. The extension westward includes an extension of Megan's Way and Anderson Boulevard, which is a new public street that connects Megan's Way to County Trunk Highway H. Village staff supplied preliminary comments upon submission, which the applicant then considered and revised the application. And they actually just did send over revised plans for me this morning, so I'll have a couple notes as we go through the conditions that you can remove as we go through. So site plan follows land use element of the comp plan on recommendations of the draft local area plan 5. In terms of the Chapter 90 standards, the only conditions that we called out were for the bulk standards. You can remove condition number 1. It does not exceed the maximum building coverage ratio. And for number 2, the applicant has indicated they will apply for an administrative adjustment for the front yard setbacks. Well, we don't think they'll have an issue with that, but what that is just they can't average less than 20 feet for those setbacks. Due to the curve of the street, some of the corners of these buildings encroach upon that a little bit, get a little bit closer to 15, but none of them would be below 15. So they would all be available via administrative adjustment. A PD overlay district covers buildings 9 through 13. That district allows street setbacks of 15 feet and building heights of 40 feet. That was from phase 1. So kind of the east side buildings don't need that administrative adjustment. It's only the ones on the west side, really around that curve of Anderson Boulevard. The RM2 district allows 3 or more household uses by right. In terms of parking and access, the applicant did clarify where the short and long-term bicycle parking spaces lie. On the site plan, the outdoor parking spaces lie next to the garages. There will be bike racks there for the short-term parking, and then the long-term parking, there will be spots for applicants within the garages. So they meet those conditions. You can remove that regarding the bike parking. In terms of the internal pedestrian circulation, again, when they cross drive aisles, they'll just need to update that to differentiate a material or height. And then buildings 1 and 2 need to connect to the public pedestrian network along Megan's Way. The applicant indicated this morning, and they can speak to it, that they're aware of those and will make the updates as part of conditioned approval. In terms of landscaping and screening, there are some areas within 50 feet of Megan's Way that will require vehicular use area screening. This was due to some late changes in regarding the circulation based on some of our preliminary comments. So they'll have to just make those kind of on the northwest side of Megan's Way between buildings, I think it's 8 and 9. Then buildings 3, 4, 5, 6, and 12 require our district screening for parking areas within 25 feet of adjacent R-zoned lots. They didn't submit any signage. In terms of fiscal note, the lands contained within the application lie within TID 2. The applicant requested TID 8 for the project, and that is currently under review by our financial advisor and also subject to CDA and village board approval. The village assessor estimated the value for each new unit approximately $150,000 per unit per our previous kind of statement when they were in front of you for the CSM last month. That's about $30 to $34.5 million for the total phase of the development. Their repaving costs are a little high, but they are extending some public roadways to areas that have remaining developable land area. So our comments last month from the CSM stand, and that we're comfortable moving this and recommending this forward for approval, and that this phase is taking the brunt of some public infrastructure costs that future development should help mitigate. They also have some kind of one-sided streets as a part of this development, particularly Megan's Way as it bends southwards towards Campus Drive. There's an environmental corridor on the east side of the road that is functionally undevelopable. So the west side of the road has to take a little bit higher of a brunt of those costs. The total estimated value per acre is $1.7 to $1.9 million. Should be a little bit higher because they added 10 units of that townhome product between last month and this month. In terms of additional staff considerations, the village highlight the intersection of Megan's Way and Anderson Boulevard as a notable intersection design. The applicant dropped the parking lanes on either side of the intersection, which minimized the impact to the adjacent wetlands and environmental corridor. Furthermore, the reduction in street width serves as a traffic calming measure for vehicles and bicycles going through the intersection and shortens the crosswalk distance for pedestrians. The applicant installed similar bump outs on Portico Drive and Veranda Lane, which function similarly as part of the Phase 1 Tivoli development. The village staff have noticed a substantial increase of pedestrian traffic surrounding the village civic campus since Tivoli Green Phase 1 completed many of the pedestrian connections to the existing neighborhoods, and believe this type of development helps encourage a safe and healthy walking community. So, my window faces out towards Campus Drive, and I see more people in the last 12 months, even in the winter, walking their dog, biking, stuff like that, than I ever did in the previous time I was employed at the village. So it's nice to see people utilizing those facilities, and we think this development, this phase of development continues that pattern westwards as it goes towards H. With that, the staff have the conditions for approval, but you can remove conditions 1, condition 3, and that's it, I believe. Condition 1 and 3 you can remove. With that, I can answer any questions on this one. Otherwise, the applicant is here.
Any questions of Sam? Go ahead, Tom.
Just a couple. Where you talk about additional staff considerations, you talk about highlighting the intersection of Megan's Way and Anderson Boulevard. But as I look through all of these drawings, I don't see an Anderson Boulevard. I see a lot of other streets, Veranda, Portico, but where's Anderson Boulevard on the maps?
Yeah, it's the one on sheet C100. It's like 3 or 4 sheets into the packet you guys had. It used to be Tivoli Green. Yeah, the bendy one at the northwest corner here.
Okay. All right, yeah, it's Tivoli on the things I'm looking at. So
Yeah.
that's Anderson, all right.
So that's where it kind of necks down. Per our comments on the Bear submission earlier, these are the type of improvements that we'd like to encourage in these denser environments where we would anticipate seeing more people walking.
It just strikes, the design is to narrow the road into that
Not to narrow the
intersection?
road, what they do is drop the parking lane. And so it just goes to, normally it's a parking lane, then a bike lane, then 2 travel lanes, then another bike lane, then another parking lane on the other side of the street. So in that stretch, they just take out the parking lane. So it's just a bike lane, a drive lane, and a bike lane.
Okay.
Well,
That makes sense.
Functionally, no one's really parking opposite the side of an intersection anyways. It's everyone's least favorite place to park. And it helped them avoid a large amount of wetlands and environmental corridor, and it functions as a better pedestrian environment. So it's kind of a win-win-win that we really wanted to highlight as a good design choice.
One other question real quick is, we have a 20-foot setback for a reason, and I see that in this case, you seem to be fine with administrative adjustments to take it down to 15 feet. What is it about this particular set of circumstances that makes you willing to waive the 20 to 15?
I think in general, it's kind of an S-curve road to provide that access out to H, where there are minimum turn radii on those roadways due to some of our subdivision standards that mean it can only bend so sharply to reach out to H, which puts awkward angles in siting functionally rectangular buildings along a curved roadway where you end up having to kind of encroach on that. We understand that. On top of the entire phase 1 has 15-foot setbacks as well. That was approved through a planned development district, as we highlighted. Our preference is to stay within the normal zoning. So in terms of approval paths to kind of match that aesthetic across phases 1 and 2, it's actually cleaner on our end for long-term tracking to have just a base level zoning district and then prove an administrative adjustment for the limited circumstances where they encroach upon that 15-foot setback, as opposed to an entire development district that we have to essentially track in perpetuity for special zoning rules. So it's just a cleaner administrative path on our end.
Okay, I understand that. I guess, just educate me briefly. The 20-foot setback is there for aesthetics reasons, for visibility reasons? I mean, why is it?
Functionally, it's aesthetic reasons. It'll probably be one of the things you actually see recommendations from us that we reduce in the future as we talk about some of those R district requirements. We like to push some of these buildings a little bit closer to the street because they have rear parking, so there's no need for front yard parking. As well as the closer move to the street helps it feel a little bit more a part of a neighborhood in terms of the neighborhood design. For us, instead of kind of these monumented buildings with, larger setbacks in the back, that space in between the roadway or the right-of-way and the front door of the building ends up becoming mode space that no one really uses. So minimizing that while still maintaining some sort of delineation between fully public and fully private. We think 15 feet is just a little bit better of a standard and provides a little bit more functionality to the rear where the parking areas are. And on top of that, these buildings all have front doors. And so you're moving front doors a little bit closer to the front street, which helps mimic kind of a, more moderate density neighborhood where that would be more common historically for aesthetic urban design.
To build on, just one comment to build on what you said, yes anding, it's mostly, from a logistical point of view, the biggest condition is parking. So if you have a front-facing garage and parking, you need at least 20 feet to kind of station a car in front of that garage without going onto a sidewalk. Well, a lot of cars these days are getting longer than 20 feet, but that's another conversation. And if there's no need for that there, then it can come closer. The other thing is that our ordinances already specify the townhouse, like a townhouse would only need 15 feet without rear access. If it has rear access, then it needs 10. However, by the strict definition of the code, these don't count as townhomes, even though that's what they are, because they're not on separate lots. Sam and I are going to look into that issue into the future, but for the townhome developments, if they are on separate lots, they would have been basically only a 10-foot setback required. So that's another condition, and that's another thing that we were thinking on. That's all.
Ram?
Yes, Sam, at the public hearing for the zoning, there were quite a few residents, especially on the South Fancher Road, who expressed concern that it's in their backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at your plan, building 5 and building 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my understanding that there will be a more of some kind of a maybe planting the trees or putting some kind of screen so that their view from the back of their houses or the land. And I don't see any of those or much of those, especially on building 3 and 4. I see in the landscaping plan, it shows, I would say maybe a reasonable number of trees planted on the back of that plat, but not enough behind building 3 and 4. I'd like to have your comments on is that I see that you have in condition the 6 that you have a district screening for all the parking areas, but I didn't see any landscaping plan behind those buildings, to address those concerns.
Yeah, generally our landscaping codes function to screen vehicular use areas from neighboring partners, not actual buildings. These all comply with the standard zoning setback. So that is kind of the focus that our zoning code takes, is generally the most disliked part of an adjacent multifamily development are the parking areas. The buildings themselves are often built of materials of equal quality to the single-family homes at a minimum that they front. And really the building setbacks are there to function that unless you plant a bunch of, arborvitae 3 feet apart and wait 20 years for them to get, 25, 30 feet tall, you'll never be able to screen those buildings. Even if they were single-family homes, you'd never be able to fully screen a single-family home that's adjacent. So the choice that we all kind of collectively made through the zoning code rewrite was to make sure that the parking areas where active use, active lights, different times of day, things like that, those are heavily screened from the residential areas. But the buildings themselves, because functionally it's impossible to screen them, have setbacks that we think are appropriate to the adjacent residential areas, but have less screening required for them. So that's how we address that through the code.
Just to add some facts, just to kind of look up, the 423 Fancher Road, that building is 75 feet from their property line. So if you're looking at the plat, imagine there's another 75 feet before you even get to their building. And there's also an existing tree line over probably 50% of his rear property line. Mm-hmm. So he's got 75 feet and 50% of it is already covered by tree line. So there's already a lot of existing distance and screening there on that side of the thing. And there still would be more done on the developed side.
So yeah, there's stuff there and we're adding more. Long story short.
No, I would encourage the developer to maybe, go a little bit more on that, to address those concerns, plans.
They did, to their credit, submit updated landscaping plans.
trees,
We
yeah.
just haven't had a chance to review them yet because it was this morning. So.
Otherwise, my only comment is again at the zoning hearing, I asked I think asked gentleman over here, I forgot the name, or maybe somebody else, that your phase 1 is 100% occupied, right? I was told that phase 1 100%. So that, for the community over there, that shows that there is a demand. If you build them, they will come and use it. I was extremely pleased to hear that the phase 1 is 100% occupied, for some in the community who are saying, why do you need all this housing? So it's a good thing to, it was a good thing to know that.
I think that also goes back to, when we
There's
receive
demand for
those
that, yeah.
comments in the public hearing, this chart goes to, it is like, from the staff's perspective, we're still playing catch up from the previous, housing crash in 2008 and underbuild of multifamily units in general even before that. I mean, you can see, other than those blue lines in there in kind of the middle of the graph are generally senior living facilities, nursing homes and things like that. So you have to go way back to the 70s before you see actual multifamily for rent apartments constructed in the village. So not only are on the rental side are we playing makeup for the housing crash, but we're playing makeup for the last 40 years of underdevelopment of this type of unit in the village. And we understand that markets change and things like that, but this is how that market is played out from here. So,
That is a good, but I have a question in regards to that. Does anybody do any follow-up as far as, because these units are very desirable and they're very nice, and what are we doing to the Racine area though, the eastern, is there now apartment buildings that are being vacated in the city of Racine and coming out? Versus actually developing so that we are building the area up?
yeah, we try to keep an eye on every community over 10,000 residents is required by state law to post a housing report every year. If you remember the last couple of years, I typically give that report in either December or January for the village board and our housing report. We try to keep an eye on the other communities' housing reports as well, just to see where they're at. We go into different details. The state only requires a kind of minimum level of reporting, but most communities go into a little bit more detail. So we try to keep an eye on those to see where they're at. Racine has been permitting their own multifamily housing recently. A lot of that is kind of historic tax credit infill redevelopment style. So I think in terms of both largely the housing tax credit game and how some of these developers are layering their capital, the city will probably function a little bit more in reusing some of its very nice old buildings and getting tax credits for those. That's taking a little bit of a different niche than some of the stuff that we're seeing here out in the village. So I certainly think there is some overlap, and we want to be cognizant of that, like you said, and not to over-incent any sort of type of development. We keep an eye on that, but I think just in general, the vacancy remains low. So while vacancy remains low, we don't feel that we're in danger of over approving any type of housing like this, at least for the time being.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of where most of your tenants have come from?
I can turn it over to them.
Yes, if there's no other questions of Sam, then let's have Mark come up and.
I'm just curious, are they mostly Milwaukee people coming down, Racine County people moving around, or?
Mark Lake, 1200 North Mayfair Road from Baumgardt Partners. I'm here with Megan Machuda, our development manager. We have seen people come from everywhere. They come from Illinois because they don't want to live in the Illinois market. They come from Milwaukee. You heard of in Travis last time when he was talking about he works in Illinois, his wife works in Madison. That's what this area is about. This area brings in people because it's centrally located. And since we came in, and I mean, you could see how much that curve that Robin and Sam showed up, you could see how many houses were built. When we came in, remember the neighbors were talking about how we don't want to be like those people back in Racine County, right? And now look at that neighborhood and look at our development. We're full. 279 units, we're full, but so does the subdivision. When we came in, the subdivision was half full. Now it's full. Maybe there's one lot that needs to come in, but now it's full. So we brought in what we promised, and now we're here to say we have such demand that we want to come in with our next phase. Now, the thing that we did with our plan is that our buildings right now are 23 unit buildings. And what we want to do is we want to come in with the next phase of that. And we figured we have a development out, and we've told you before that we have a development out in Oconomowoc called Lachlan. It's very well received. We've taken that newer building and we've turned that into a new version that's small, that's larger. So here's our new version. And I just gave these plans to Sam this morning. So this is our new version. It's a 20 unit version instead of a 23 unit version. Lot of, you know, and it's a bit smaller. It's only got seven garages. We'll have 5 external garages. Each and every one of them is external. Has its own 2-story walk-up. No different really than what Fiduciary kind of was showing before, 2-story walk-up. But the important part about this, or even about the next one I'll show you, which is our townhomes, is the fact that it's more pedestrian scaled. And so that's the reason why we're asking for that 5-foot difference and getting it back to 15 feet as to what we did in this phase 1. We asked for 15-foot front. We worked with staff for a long time, and it really was staff. It's like, hey, if we're making this pedestrian friendly, we want people to walk on our sidewalks. We want people to sit on our front porches and be close to the public. That's what these are. That's what these do. Everybody's got a 2-story walk-up. You're walking into your house. You're walking up to your 2nd floor unit right on the sidewalk. Thank you, Robin. And so this is what the stacked flats look like. Now, the other one that we have is we also have it's our townhome. Now, they kind of look the same because we use the same coloring scheme, right? But what you'll see is that these are different units, and that each and every one of every other one is a unit. And so this is 10 units per building, and these are closer to, this is the front, closest to the street. These will be along Megan's Way, and then we'll have one that faces the central corridor, central green that's on our property, and that goes in between it. So we spent a lot of time, and by making the setback smaller, we can maximize the green space centrally, and then we can maximize the green space behind the buildings where people get them off the street. We'll have people parking on the street. This doesn't show a lot of parking, it shows cars driving by, but each and every one of these units will have a front porch, so that they can sit, they can dock out on the front porch, and then their backs are on the 2-story walk-ups are the townhomes. You know, they're basically going to have a garage, you know, back-to-back garage. So the only people that are going to notice are the people that their garage, and every garage is a 2-car garage. So it's large enough to park an F-150 or Suburban or whatever it is. Each and every one of these, now we have more garages, we have more parking, and our normal, when you look at all of our units through a Baumgardt's portfolio, we average about 1.3 cars per unit. But there's more and more people. Mount Pleasant is a commuter city, still is a commuter city. We want it walkable. We're walkable, but it's a commuter city. So a number of our tenants have been requesting more parking. And so we're taking care of that a little bit. And, you know, Sam and Robin talked about how last time they talked about, you know, we have a lot of parking. Well, we have a lot of parking in here. We have some areas that this is the newest site plan. And so a couple of the things that Commissioner was talking about was how close this is. Well, we've moved these buildings further away, and we just haven't updated the site plan yet. So we moved the boulevard 50 feet to the east. We pulled these buildings out a little bit more so that we could have the regular parking that's required for these buildings. We squished this a little bit so we didn't have extra space that wasn't necessary between it. But what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to have a couple extra parking spaces. These guys up here, their existing place is underparked. They've been requesting more. Now, we have tenants from Foxconn, we have tenants from Cree, we have tenants from JAKs, we have, what do they call them, Still Yates, right?
CNH.
Or CNH,
CNH.
whatever. And then, Incinerator, Emerson, a lot of the hospitals, but, so we got tenants that are all driving. And, everybody has another car, so they've been clamoring, saying, hey, can you please get us some more parking? So we're providing more parking. The townhomes don't need it, because the townhomes each have a 2-car garage, plus there's 2 parking spaces behind every unit, so we got a fair amount of parking. The administrative part of it, item number 2, or the condition number 2, is so that we're a lot like our first phase, and secondly, so that we're more pedestrian. We really want to be pedestrian. We want people to park on the street and walk into a home or into a unit. We don't want to, and like Robin had said, it used to be like you go down 90th Street, you got houses, and then people park in the garage because they have front-facing garage. That's the setback, because that's where you put a car. We're not doing that. This is just the front of the street, and they're parking parallel on the street. We have, since we did update and we did move that road and we did change with it, we had a meeting with staff, and we originally didn't have this dual thing with the 2 townhomes. We had another one of these one of these was over here. But we decided that we could have another building so we face this central green. Since we moved things around, it messed up our landscaping plan. And so that we'll do, and we'll update when we come in with CDs. And then the last comment that Sam was talking about are these 2 buildings. I'm the least sure about those buildings that I am anything. Because first we're building this way. We're in discussions with these couple property owners to see how this all fits out. And then we're gonna develop this as commercial. So these will probably be our last buildings. They may not even end up being this way. So putting a trail out, putting in all that other stuff, okay, maybe. I can put it on the drawing, but it may change. So I just didn't put it on the drawing. And lastly, the one question that they have about is the pedestrian circulation, number 4. We changed that plan when we did Lachlan out in Economwalk. That has been it's been an ongoing condition now for a lot of municipalities. How do you get the ADA access completely around the building? And at this scale and this set of plans, it doesn't show up well. It only really shows up when you get down to the CDs, the construction drawings. And then you can see how you change the pavement from behind the garages or to the ends of a driveway when you're crossing on a driveway with a sidewalk or something. And it's usually a stripe, or it's a colored pavement, or it's actually changing from asphalt to concrete and then put indicators on it or something. So that shows up best on a CD as opposed to a plan commission presentation. So if there are any other questions, Megan or I can answer them for you.
Real quick, there's sidewalks in front of the buildings, right?
Mhm.
Even though
Every one of them.
they didn't really show on your plan.
Yep.
Great.
Every one of them. And there'll be sidewalks around it, because that's the unique part of not the townhomes, but the townhomes will have sidewalks to get around, because that's their front door, and their garages are their back door. The 2-story walk-ups, or the stacked flats, which now we call them stacked flats, I guess, because that's a Madison term. Half the people come in through the front, and they have to walk around the building to go to the garage or their parking space, or they park on the street. The other half, their entrance is right on the garage side of the building. So, and there's connectivity, ADA pathway around every building.
You mentioned before about people living there and going either north or south, and I've heard the same thing where go out Highway 20, they either go south to Abbott or Kenosha or Chicago or someplace, and the other person goes north. So
Right.
This is a central location.
Yeah, this is a central location. Our plan is to have Anderson Boulevard, Sam made us change the name, but have Anderson Boulevard.
Is it with a S-O-N or E-N? That makes a difference.
It's Danish, it's E-N.
Okay, good. Okay.
So Anderson
Yeah.
Boulevard, and that's the way it was presented. So Anderson Boulevard, get people out to Anderson, out to H to go north, so they don't go 90th to
Yeah.
Old Spring and et cetera. So, yes.
So where does Anderson come from?
Hans Christian Andersen.
Oh, okay.
And actually, if you look at Copenhagen, go to Copenhagen, Hans Christian Andersen Boulevard is by Tivoli Place.
There you go.
So that kind of all
Nice.
ties together.
Well,
Nice.
other than Copenhagen, at one time, there were more Danes in Racine than there were in other places.
I'm
that
one
I
of them.
ran into. Well, you told me a couple of people you knew before, like Tom Bunker and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and I gave you my sympathy.
Yeah. I'm Danish myself, so.
So am I. Fisker, my grandparents.
My mom's
Right.
side.
Any other questions or concerns for Mark?
No, but I like to
Megan?
again, I'll have a comment, like I mentioned to you the last time, and like I mentioned to the previous, for the Yates Drive, thank you. Thank you for building elegant, state-of-the-art residences in the village of Mount Pleasant, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion.
Not yet. I just want to see if there's any public comment. Okay, hearing none. Sure.
I make a motion to approve the South Fancher Road County Highway H site plan application, SP 1222, subject to the recommended conditions for approval.
Second.
Aye.
But I thought we didn't need some of the conditions. Did I not remember?
1 and 3 are gone. The remaining 4?
Right.
So let's not make it subject to all of them. Let's just make it cleaner, just say which ones aren't included.
No.
1 and 3.
So one and 3 are out. So it would be subject conditions 2, 4, 5, and 6, Sam?
Correct.
Motion maker accept that?
Yes.
Second accept that?
Yeah.
All right. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mark, Megan, thank you.
Now, are you going to put a Kringle bakery out there too?
Mr. Chair, do you want to take a 5-minute break?
We will take a 5-minute break. Yes, we will.
Who are we,
So next on the agenda then is Kingston Home Condominium Plat Application CP 0222.
Okay, this is comparatively speaking, this is a lot simpler than what we've been talking about. The applicant wants to plat an additional one-unit, single-family detached house on a lot with an existing duplex. So our zoning code does allow for that if they do one of two things. One, they either have to have basically the open space to have dedicated right-of-way for a public road to go through in case the properties were to be divided in the future, or they have to condo plat it. And so after trying unsuccessfully to get the number one option, and I'll explain why, the number two option was implemented, and this is a condo plat for the 3 units. They are owned and occupied by a mother and daughter, and this one is going to be constructed fairly soon. Let's say, as far as any of the design standards, the only things that are mentioned is that the submitted plat is 1 foot shy of the minimum required setback for the garage. It's 24, it needs to be 25 from the property line. And then, actually, wait, scratch that. Because the property line is that one, it's 24 feet from the roadway. So that doesn't actually matter. So scratch that one. And then there's also, the homes are 15 feet apart and they need to be 16 feet. The last condition is that since the garage is in front of the home, either we need to see a schematic or drawing showing that it either has decorative windows or is wood clad. So Chapter 90, it meets all the Chapter 90 standards, and it meets the first condition of following these Chapter 74 plat requirements. Fiscal note, this does not lie within any tax incremental districts. The 75% medium 2-unit home value in the village is $293,000, and the median single-family home value is $312,000. The total estimated value of the development per acre is $435,000. Cost projections for the adjacent road repaving estimated the project needs to contribute 14.9% of its taxes over 20 years of the cost of repaving. However, Emerson Road is a collector and carries more traffic than the population of the things that are serving it. Okay, so additional considerations, and this is more for background because there's almost nothing we can do about it now. The applicant and her family own the 12-acre parcel to the rear of this parcel. So that's the 12 acres immediately behind the red shaded area on your screen. The parcel has Green Valley Drive stubbed into it with Explorer Drive stubbed nearby, which is one parcel down. The staff informed the applicant that development of the rear parcel would likely require public access from South Emerson Road, as well as accommodating connections or future connections to those stub streets. The applicant has indicated a desire to develop that in the future. The staff and applicant explored options to allow for a 66-foot right-of-way clearance to accommodate this opportunity, but could not come to an agreement. One of which was exploring the possibility of trading some land, like 10 feet of land on the north side of this property with a sliver owned on the north side of that neighbor's property. But I think they wanted something in the neighborhood of $30,000 to do that. So that was off the table. The village staff did adequately warn the applicant that they would need to acquire additional right-of-way or move or take the garages down, or submit a zoning variance application for reduced street yard setbacks for the existing homes if they wanted to get a public access through that area. So it's really difficult in this situation because it's not like it's not a CSM. It's not, a subdivision plat or anything like that. We have very limited authority to say this is how you should arrange these because of future considerations for property that you own. Mostly, staff said, this is a good idea, you should probably do it. And I did feel that they tried almost, every conceivable option in order to get there. It's just, it didn't work out. So in that respect, if there were to be a public road, it could be a narrower public road profile, such as a 60-foot or something like that, or the owner or village possibly could obtain, not the village, I wouldn't assume that would be a thing, but it's possible, would be attaining additional right-of-way for that to go through. Yeah, that's a long story about not too much. On the other hand, as far as this particular application at hand, it meets, all of those requirements, and the staff recommends the following conditions for approval. This is the final approving body for this application. So you are the approval that they should amend the plat so that the garages, so strike condition 1, condition 2, amend the plat so that the buildings are 16 feet from each other, and amend the building plans for the garages to have decorative windows or be wood clad. That being said, I will happy to answer any questions.
Well, I have to make a comment because this was originally, I believe, you tell me or not, but I would believe that this was originally going to be a 3-unit attached property when we approved this site several years ago.
Yeah, they actually amended that condo plat for this condo plat. They submitted an amendment to those.
Because I know there was some issue in regards to whether it had to be sprinklered or whatever at the time, correct? Yeah. And what you're telling me is we, the village, want access to Emerson Road. Why are we allowing them to put a private driveway there? Why are we not making them put the 60-foot road in if that's what we want to do? We should be able to align that. I mean, I don't know how they have the ability to do it now, but not now because it's already under construction, obviously. So those garages are probably already in the problem, correct?
So the duplex was the stone was cast when the duplex was put in, and there was nothing we can do to basically determine where that duplex was placed. That was a by right placement. They could put it wherever we want. I tried so hard, above and beyond the Call of Duty cold calling neighbors to try to get them to have that amount of space necessary, so that this would be easier in the future. It did not work.
Because they own a little sliver, it looks like, that property actually has a sliver out to Emerson Road, but it's not wide enough, correct?
Yeah, that was the property, that was the proposition of swapping,
right,
like 17 feet of that for 17 feet of the south. But the property owner effectively said no to that. There's still ways that it can happen and it can be done. There's certainly enough space. It's just how easy that space is to get. So once that duplex came in, the die has been cast. Like you have that difficulty no matter what you do, and there's nothing that we could do about the placement of that duplex. I even tried to talk to the builder to get them to move the garages so that they weren't in the front of the structure, but that was no dice because of expense, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it. I mean, they have had plans to develop that back parcel for a long time, but it's also been not developed for a long time. So they've been duly warned that the village is going to want a connection through there, because if it's just serviced by those side roads, that's a long time to get to your house, to go through that network. And everybody wants to be able to get to a collector fairly soon.
Well, we should have done something about this before we approved that site back then.
There's nothing we could have done. that was all like by right. There's no like sort of feasible way for us to say you can't build your house, you can't site your house here.
Well, yes, we could if it was divided, because I'm assuming that that was a part of that parcel originally. The back parcel was attached to that one there, and at some point they must have subdivided it off.
Not since we've been here, at least, Joe. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we collectively as the village would agree with you, like in our actions over time, yes, but like in the time that Robin has been working on this, it's always been a separate parcel.
Yeah, I know that, you guys, but I'm saying before that, I'm sure that that had to be subdivided, or
Yeah,
CSM'd,
the original condo plat could have addressed it, and so as soon as it was done in this manner, where it was just a duplex placed on there, and then they went through this measure, there's not a whole lot we can do. There's still enough room there. It's just that there's a couple of additional steps, or garages have to be nudged.
So the setback from the garages would be what? If a 60-foot right-of-way was put in there, what would that?
So they're not too far away. So it's 24 feet from the garages to their private drive. The private drive is 20 feet across, so you're already at 44. And I believe it's an additional, I can't remember. It's additional probably 20 feet from that to the other side. So you're at about, like, it's really, really close. It's like 58 to 60, somewhere in that general area. And that's why it was so frustrating, because it was very, very, very close to 66, and we just couldn't get it over the finish line.
Just one of those circumstances where, when we don't have a legal mechanism to force someone to do something, we do our best to try to convince them that we're trying to steer them in the right direction, but ultimately,
So
if they follow the
decide
rules.
to subdivide the back part of it, can't this be revisited and connected through?
Yeah, we can put we have overall approval authority on subdivisions, like above and beyond. We could just say no because we don't feel like it. So we can place a condition that we need, for traffic reasons and stuff like that, there needs to be a condition out to Emerson Road. And so be it.
Okay, so we still have the control of that at some point, because, I can see where you're not going to want to be just those back roads to get into that area. It's just
almost
makes
landlocked.
more sense to go through Emerson Road.
It's a tough parcel, and I spent some sweat equity on this one to try to get that happen, but it's still possible. There's some additional steps, or we have to get some additional sort of variances or accommodations through the Public Works Committee. And, that's a separate committee, and we can't assume how they'll act on it. They would have to change it to accept even a 60-foot dedication.
Yeah, because, again, what's the plan for the back parcel of this yet? I mean, are they considering putting in a couple more buildings yet?
So this back parcel is about 12 acres. I would probably just say recommending the density and development pattern that currently exists.
No,
So-
I'm talking about the parcel that these three are on now. It looks like they have another 180 feet.
Oh, yeah, they totally could. And that would probably, I would assume, if they came in with a subdivision plat, that they would parcel that into the subdivision plat. Because otherwise, it's kind of a waste, so, agreed.
Yeah, because obviously then, because that's going to stop, that's definitely always going to be a separate parcel and never be able to connect to the new subdivision there because of the private drive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anything else for Robin? If not, any public comment? No? All right. Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the Kingston Homes Condominium Plat Application CP 0222 to the Village Board, subject to the recommended conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next will be Lube or Lube?
Lube.
Lube, bench donation application.
Church.
Put that in. This one is probably, is not the most up to date, thing,
Well,
but
we'll
George
have
is coming
George
up.
deal with that then.
Oh, you got the clicker. So this application for memorial bench is pretty straightforward. The location that they have is Campus Park, and the reason that it's not specific is we're still trying to identify the exact bench location, but there's several identified on the construction plans, several build-outs that have already been poured of where it's potentially could go. So you guys can go through and approve this based on, I can come back with the proposed location, or you can grant staff approval of the location to one of the identified bench pads that are as part of the construction plans. It's kind of a different route that you want to go. It's pretty straightforward application. There's nothing abnormal about the inscription or anything like that. So they wanted to get in before the end of the year. So the application just came in, as you can see, relatively quick. Because of the way the prices are going for these benches, as far as for us, we will be changing pricing for next year, so that's why they wanted to get this in even before the construction was complete. So again, you guys have a couple of ways to go about the approval of this if you want.
And the spelling and everything on here of those words is actually, she did that?
What? I'm not sure which.
For a memorial bench inscription.
Yes, yeah, this was the applicant who turned this in.
Okay, so she did that. Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that's a Y, not an X, as the last letter on the inscription.
Any questions for George on this?
I'll make a motion that we approve the memorial bench donation, and I would also recommend that we leave it to staff's location as well, places.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's all yours.
If I see her at church on Sunday, I'll tell her.
All right, then we'll move right into staff reports. George, you're there. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's your favorite part of these meetings, I think, for the last couple
is.
months. So, Campus Park update. Obviously, a lot has taken place in the last month. Every time you drive by, it seems like there's something new that's been happening. So, kind of go over a few items that have taken place, and then I'll run through some of the photos. We've got the building structure, walls are up. Foundation has been poured for that portion of the building. The stage is set. That foundation hasn't been set or concrete yet, as they're putting together the roof and the beams and everything that's taking place. So that will be complete here in the next couple of weeks. All of the outer loops and pathways have been stoned, ready for paving. Paving will be happening over the next 2 weeks. They put in anywhere where there would be concrete meeting any asphalt paving. All of that concrete work has been complete now, so that there's no issues for them. Smolinski Path has been stoned, ready for paving. That's all the clearing that needed to be done for that has been completed. We've poured foundations underneath 3 of the 4 shelters. So the one remaining is the one by the splash pad, which is just had an inspection yesterday. So concrete will be coming for that as well. They've graded all of the field areas so far, so including the softball diamonds and the cricket pitch. The concrete for the cricket pitch out there has been completed as well. So we're moving along. They did all the work for the stoning and subgrades for the basketball courts. The basketball stanchions are in as well, all the concrete leading up to that. So even in the next 2 weeks, if you go back and look at it, it's going to be looking even closer to a complete project. So landscaper will be coming in the next month or so to begin some of the landscape and seeding for that project. So yeah, we've made a ton of progress here. The weather obviously helps, so hopefully we'll see a string of good weather here for the next 2 months. One thing I will note, with that outer paving that we're gonna have to do, we will have to close the pickleball courts for either a half a day to a day, because their access crosses where the pathway paving would be done, and we'll communicate that to the public when that happens, so.
Do they know that?
They don't now. We just found, I actually stepped out for a phone call to find out that they said it's gonna happen in the next week, so I'll work with Lisa on communicating that to tell everybody, at least look for a notification of when that closure will happen. And any local contacts that I've, developed over the last year or so since they went in, I will reach out to them just to kind of spread that word. But they knew that this would happen at some point, because as they crossed that stone path, so it's just a matter of time when the paving will be going through that portion of the park, so.
There are days I think we could have put twice as many pickleball courts over there, and it still would be full.
Yeah, well, Racine County just finished theirs out at Pritchard, so there's 4 other courts there. I drove through there yesterday to take a look at them. So, yeah, they're...
Well, Racine Country Club of Meadowbrook has also put them in too, so.
Yeah. So here's some of the photos. So this is the shelter that's closest to the basketball courts. You can see the concrete leading up to that. That concrete goes towards the basketball courts, and you can see how it's been stoned there and the stanchions are in, and the area has been graded for seating. So again, with the asphalt paving of the outer loop, they'll be paving that portion of the basketball courts, let that cure for 30 days, and they'll come in and do the actual finished painting and striping of the courts itself. This is some of the sidewalk work that was along the oval where the great lawn is. And then you can see this is just kind of what I was talking about, how they've stoned all of the outer pathways or any pathway, asphalt pathway throughout the project. That's the Smolinski path on the left-hand side there. So again, that was stoned, ready to go, and so now they'll be able to work their way. They were out there on site today to figure out which direction they're going to go, but so they can enter and exit and meet at a certain point. So again, it's ready to go all the way leading up to, if you're familiar with Smolinski, it's right before there's a green sign that we put some advertisements or promotional materials in there. It leads right into the sidewalk there, so that's your access when you come into the parking lot. You head right on that sidewalk path, and you can jump on the trail from there. So, and then that's again, so the outer loop of the great lawn there, and you can kind of see that it tails up towards Campus Drive there, and that's one of those meeting points of the concrete and the asphalt that they were working on. So, oh, there's the donation. So, in case anybody couldn't see the inscription, so.
I think George has a couple extra photos he can show you after the meeting too. There's one with a crane that didn't make the presentation, but you might find interesting. So if you're interested in seeing that, just find them.
Sure.
Yeah, that one I think is on the website. So if you go to the campus park phase 2 portion of the webpage, the August photos have been, at least August photos for thus far of the month have been uploaded there, so.
All right, any questions of George? No, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep it up. All right, Robin.
I'll be riding my trike to my next meeting.
Yeah, you could.
Absolutely. Right through Smolinski Park. It's
Nice.
perfect.
I think I know what happened.
There's a big article about e-bikes in Milwaukee.
So just staff review and permits, administrative adjustment applications, 3220 Roslyn Avenue, side yard setback for attached garage reduction from 15 to 12.75 feet. That's in the RE district, which has greater side setbacks than any residential zoning that we had before.
Now, when you do that, do you get the neighbor approval, or are they notified?
Yeah. Well, we request that they basically do a neighbor communication survey. Okay. This is a private road that technically is like landlocked and should be in Elmwood Park. It comes in at the top of Spring Lake. Josh, you probably don't know where this is. It comes in over there. And it's a private road, and this person has one neighbor. And we had a signed letter from that neighbor saying that this was fine. And it was only because of a corner. So this was attached to the house, and it was only a corner that sort of went off. I think they only needed 13.74. So, A-okay. And we normally let these things out for, 10 days to see if anybody contacts us and has a problem with it. If not, we just go ahead and approve it. Sign permits, Walmart on Oaks Road had a new sign package. Blue Sky Self-Storage, that's a rebrand from the Store Here storage. That's on 7505 Durand. Lots of change in hands of these money printing factories known as self-storage units. Lee and Associates, so that's actually just approving of temporary signage advertising the new truck facility that's on the frontage road to the north. Express Employment Professionals and David Insurance are down on Bankers Road, and Carpetland right there on Oaks Road. Zoning compliance permits still going strong. Everybody requesting their certificate of occupancy and their Badger Bounce Back grant letters. Still going up. J.R. Wright Tires on Phillips, a chicken coop at 3737 Sherry. Chicken coop, probably the single most popular ordinance I've ever gotten passed here at Mount Pleasant.
No roosters.
Yeah, that's right. No roosters. Verizon Wireless on 6035 Durand, that's next to the Cadoba. Zoning request letter and municipal complaints, none to report.
What's the zoning request letter on Carlton Road? What is that? What is that?
They're just, whenever, they don't really tell me if it's like something that's happening or anything like that. This is basically saying, we want all of your data from what is this zoned for, what could it be zoned for, what is the things around it zoned for, does it have any open violations, yada, yada, yada. It's a due diligence thing.
Oh, so this is a parcel that's probably for sale?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So if
Yeah.
somebody wants to find out what they can do there. Got it.
Yeah, this is the first, let's call it smoke signal of something happening on a property, is when these zoning request letters come in.
Those are kind of above and beyond an open records request, which are obviously subject to the open records laws. These are where they're specifically requiring a signed letter from the village staff saying, here is exactly what you can do with it. So there's like zoning resource companies that title companies work with, and so we charge them because we kind of get inundated with these, just like sign a piece of paper telling us that we can do what the zoning says we can do kind of thing. So that's why we charge for it, is it's a little above and beyond a standard open records request.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Sam?
Just a brief update. So the assessor's contract is technically a part of the community development department. Dan, our assessor, is a contracted employee. His contract ends at the end of this year. So just an update for the plan commission that the village board approved a 5-year contract extension for him moving forward. That'll take place between 2023 and 2027. So, yeah. Good terms, good update. We will have consistent assessing. He continues to be a valued contracted employee here at the village, and we get a good deal for his services. So we're happy to have him.
Good deal.
I think that's it for us. Next meeting is September, I think, 21st, something like that. So
Yep.
we'll see you then.
21st. All right, thank you, Sam.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Motion a second.